think shaking a camera can work sometimes, if that's what it calls for. Like I love what they did in the Bourne series. I think that, if you're trying to create something that, like, let's say Saving Private Ryan, if you're trying to emulate something with a shaking camera, that works. But to me, I like to have an action scene where at least you're aware of the geography. So I think that's important.
Here come the rest of the cast. Cung Lee. You don't see a lot of athletes get into movies. We can make jokes about Michael Jordan, but he did one playing himself. We are seeing a lot of MMA fighters become actors. Randy Couture, Gina Carano, and you, and we could name even more. What do you think it is about MMA that translates well to acting?
Well, I think MMA is the fastest growing sport, and there's a lot of followers and fans. So, the directors and producers are taking a chance with some of the MMA athletes, giving them a shot for some screen time. And luckily for me, I just been blessed, and I have a good team. My agent, my manager, and my wife, my family, friends, just supporting me and my journey. So I'm just I feel blessed for being that MMA fighter that got that shot here.
Cung wasn't only an actor in the movie, he did all of the fight choreography in the movie. Actually over there are basically the two guys responsible for all of that choreography. So Cung in this movie was really more of a partner in the whole thing, in every part of the creative process. And I think to answer the question about MMA guys, and it's not any MMA guy, because a lot of them may not be capable of it, but I think what they bring to the table is, understanding that, stunt fighting is very different than real fighting, but certain guys are able to understand, first of all, putting choreography together, which is more similar to dance choreography as far as remembering moves and selling those moves and reacting. And certain guys are really good at it, certain ones are not. But people in MMA already have the physical abilities to do this kind of choreography. So I think that makes them perfect for movies.
Thank you. Do we have any questions in the audience? Raise your hand. Yes, sir.
Where did you find beach, and how did you prepare for your role?
How did you find beach, and how did you prepare for your role?
Let me just, I'm gonna pass
He's
out
a method
here.
actor.
But again, to tell you how much involvement Cung Lee had in this movie, I was casting different roles, and Cung was constantly saying, okay, I got this guy, you got to put him in it. And they would all be guys that would be great for it, people he was doing all the stunts with, and I was like, all right, I'm going to trust Cung on anyone who he's got to do stunts with. And then there's this role of Beach, and Cung's like, you got to put this guy Eddie Rouse in it. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to cast the whole movie with his stunt buddies. He's like, trust me, listen, just look at, he made me watch his reel. So I watched the reel and was instantly sold, and that's like Eddie talked about it.
Thank you. The question was, how do I prepare for my role? I didn't. What it was, I got the call from John and Cung to come down, and John was like, "We're going to add another scene to this," and he wrote a script, a scene for me and my buddy here, Andrew. We met in a hotel guest room.
It was like a conference room.
They said, "Okay, y'all guys ready? Let's do it tomorrow." We get to the set. And we start the scene, and John comes in and says, "Listen, guys, just use the script as a framework. We're going to back out. Just go for it." So, thanks to Andrew and I's chemistry, which was immediate when we met, and John being one of those kind of directors that trusts his actors and give them a lot of creativity, just let us out the box, man. I must say that. When you have people like that supporting you, especially being an actor in front of the camera and everybody behind the camera said, "Man, just do your thing." And I drew on my experiences from the people I grew up with, while we're counting along the way. To be quite honest, I smoked a little crack in my time.
Any other questions?
It was before methamphetamine. I know what that was. At the time I was doing drugs, if I had known about methamphetamine, I'd tried that shit too.
I'd like to say that when we were doing that, basically that scene was shot on the last day of shooting. Literally the next day or that night was rap party, right? You know.
Yeah.
And we met first the night before, and John took us over to the hotel where Eddie was staying, and basically we asked the front desk, you know, is there a room we can use to kind of like work out the scene and break it down a little bit, and they said, oh yeah, go use that conference room right there, conference room number 2, you know, and we were yelling and screaming motherfucking shit and everyone thought someone was getting fired, like, oh, producers are pissed, you know, something, and we came out like, what's up, and they were all like, oh, so, I mean, basically we worked it out like 8, 9 different times. Yeah. It was good times, good times.
Also, just to add, the only way we would have gotten away with doing that scene was on the last day of shooting, because we actually, we actually were able to spend a half a day doing it, and producers were getting a little worried because we were 2/3 of the way through the day and we still hadn't set off any guns or anything. But it was just like, let's just let these guys go and go. We know it's something great, and like I say, some of the producers were getting a little squirrely, but then fortunately one of the kind of money guys walked in at that time, and we put him down in front of the monitor, and he was laughing his ass off. So that bought us a little extra time.
So up in the back.
I got a question for Cung. I was curious what you thought of Jean-Claude Van Damme's martial art abilities, and could you take him?
Cung, what did you think of Van Damme's martial arts, and could you take him? That's from the audience. You have to answer.
Well, obviously in the movie I got kicked in the head a few times, so I didn't take him in the movie, but you know, he still got his speed, and I mean, he's actually, you know, I didn't know what to expect with Jean-Claude Van Damme, and I trusted John Hyams because he worked with him before, and he says, hey, Cung, just defend yourself and make sure protect your throat. So a couple times I don't get rich hand me in the throat, and I was like, oh, thank God I tightened up my, you know, my throat muscles. But you know, he's very fast, and you know, he was down to do a little light sparring session, and everyone's all, Cung, be very careful and don't hurt him. And so I just kept my hands up, and he started throwing hook kicks at me, and I blocked the hook kick, and he'll wrap around and hit my head. I was like, this guy's trying to kill me! But a great guy, and you know, I mean, you guys can pretty much, yeah, I mean, he's not a fighter, so I mean, but he's dedicated to what he does, so if he dedicated himself to fighting, who knows, you know?
Another question up there.
At what point when you were reading the script, did you know you wanted to make it into a film? What inspired you?
John, at what point reading the script did you know you wanted to make this film?
Well, this movie came together, for me personally, really fast. The writer right here, Tim Torrey, is the guy who wrote the script. He had been developing it, and actually he'd been developing it for, you know, a long time, and that was a script at the After Dark, you know, with Courtney Solomon and Moshe Diamant. Those guys have been developing this story. I actually was in town with them at the time, working on developing another movie that we had written, and we were going to go make this movie, but we got hung up in the script process of that for a while, and they had been starting to fill out this slate of these 5 action movies that they wanted to do. So essentially they came to me and said, hey, while you're still prepping this movie and trying to write it, come and read this script, see what you think. And I read it, I'm like, oh, you know, this is really cool, but you know, I'm working on this other movie. And they said, no problem, you know, you'll have plenty of time to do that. That's, you know, we'll put that one aside, you get this one going. I said, oh, okay, you sure? And they said, yeah. And then it was like, okay, prep it in 3 weeks and let's go. And I was like, oh shit. So it became like this, you know, the thing came together really, really fast. Cung was on board already, and and then in this like quick prep process, I mean, honestly, wouldn't have been able to do it if it wasn't for meeting with Cung and finding out what he was all about, because it wasn't just like some guy coming down and I'm gonna have to figure everything out. This was a guy who came down with the whole plan, with the team, and I basically said, all right, he basically handled all that action. I would come in every little, talk to him about it, but Cung had to basically design that whole aspect of the film. So I think after meeting him, I realized, all right, the two of us can, at least if we're at the center of this thing, we can pull this off. But that's how we did it.
Did you get to make that other movie?
Yep. Yeah. Made the other movie, finished the other one too, so that'll be out in October. Universal.
We have more questions? Second row.
The action was incredible, and I thought it was really brilliant that you used Crystal to bring in some how she came into the process, and what it was like working with such manly men.
Crystal, how did you come into the process?
I got brought the script. My manager called me and it was like, hey, so there's this movie. I need you to read the script right away. It was like one day and then get an answer, and then you're flying out in 2 days. It was great. I read it and it was a really great script, and I thought that it would be really fun to do this action film. Like it was my first action film actually. I have handled guns though before. This is great. It's always fun. Yeah, but yeah, it was, and working. They were all gentlemen. It was awesome. I mean, they all had these, great, like fight scenes and stuff, and their adrenaline's going. But yeah, they were always, very respectful.
Any more questions way in the back?
Was there any injuries during any of the fight scenes?
Any injuries? Who wants to take that?
Yes, there were a lot of injuries. The last fight scene you guys seen with me and Cung, I think probably 2 hours before that, I probably was ODing on Advil. Had heating packs on my back. And then the very end of the scene where you seen him doing the scissors takedown, I actually got knocked out. For a second, I remember looking up going, why is he above my couch? And then all of a sudden, he punched me a couple times. I was like, oh yeah, we're at the movie. So yeah, there was a lot of injuries. And that was a cool thing. I mean, a lot of these guys, took a lot of punishment and got right back out there and hit that. I mean, we had tape on us and pads, and so that's you've seen the result.
All right. I mean, I'm not a fighter, but my back has been hurting for a year and a half.
Hey, buddy, you signed a waiver.
I did.
You signed a waiver.
I did.
Well, also, before Scott, got a little slight concussion, that scene where he swept me and I landed on my head, there was no mats there. There was concrete, and thank God I didn't start bleeding, but I did have a big knot. So, and I couldn't sleep even though it was on my pillow, because the knot was kind of like a couple inches.
You forgot Dan hit you.
And also Dan Henderson hit me twice.
And then there was also a pretty funny incident. It wasn't funny at the time, but the beginning scene in the prison yard where that big guy comes up to Cung and they get into it. Well, that scene we rehearsed, and Van Damme's supposed to come in and do a kick to the guy. It's supposed to be obviously missing by a couple feet. We're going to shoot the first angle, and then we're going to get all the other angles. On take number one, the guy, first of all, was not an actor, he was a teamster, so he's one of the truck drivers. And I love Johnny Holmes, actually is his name. Funny enough. But he had a great look. I said, Johnny, I'd love to get you in the movie, and he's a real nice guy, obliged. And first take, Van Damme blasted it. Broke his nose, knocked part of his tooth out. And so that was that. All that blood pouring down his face was real. And he was pretty unhappy after that. Would not do the kick again, so we had to kind of improvise that scene, so that was another real one.
John Holmes.
Injuries.
Oh.
Any more questions?
So that his true tooth in the movie was real then?
Yeah, the chipped tooth, yeah. You actually can see a piece of his tooth flying out of his mouth. And funny enough, when afterwards, I went to Johnny and he was sitting there, blood coming out of his nose, broken, and I was like apologizing. Jean-Claude felt terrible. He was, kind of pacing around. I said, Johnny, I'm really sorry about this. Your nose, you gonna be all right? And he's like, oh, my nose. He's like, I've broke that tons of times before. I'm not worried about that. He's like, it's my teeth. And it turned out he took real pride in his teeth. I guess he's the only guy in his family who still had his teeth. And, so now he's missing part of
it. There?
I had one more for Crystal. Great job. Looked like you're in some pretty rough neighborhoods. Did you spend any time in neighborhoods like that before filming the prep for your role? Did you feel more comfortable? I mean, how did that affect you?
I'm not Dina, I grew up in that neighborhood. Yeah, it was, definitely, throughout my childhood. And I guess I lived in Sherman Oaks. But, no, I lived in Hancock Park. No.
You, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was very impressed with how realistic the fight scenes were and how there weren't extra action or movements. And I definitely love that scissor kick from your Sand and Chow days. That was nice that you got that in there.
Yeah. Just to say what these guys, what Scott and what Cung is saying, and that is kind of the difference maybe between fighters and stunt guys. And I have nothing but respect for stunt guys. I love them, and they're amazing what they do. But they, stunt guys are actors, so they kind of prepare as if they have to do something multiple times. Doesn't mean they're not getting hurt all the time. They are. But these guys were often, like Scott, I know Scott was always like, just really hit me in the face. And I would say, no, he doesn't need to hit you in the face. Come on. He's like, no, just do it. And these guys are always like hit, and Cung had his whole kind of group of guys that trained with him, so they were always like throwing each other and landing on their head and doing things that you really couldn't do more than once. And I'd have to be saying to Cung, we got to do multiple takes. He'd say, don't worry about it. And that final fight between Cung Le and Trevor Prangley was, it was brutal what they were doing to each other, take after take, and but these are two fighters, so I guess getting punched to them just doesn't feel the same as it does to the rest of us.
It's training, right? It's training.
We have time for one more question. Does anyone have a last question? Up in the back corner?
Yeah. I do acting sometimes, and as an actor, when you watch it all together on the screen, do you consider other aspects aside from judging your own performance, like the soundtrack? Like, do you think they did a good choice on picking? Does the music in some scenes make them better to you than they seemed while you were doing them?
Did everyone hear the question? It was, as actors, when you see the final product, how do you feel about the other elements and things like music? How do you feel they improve the scene? Whoever would like to answer.
When you're doing the scene, you don't have any music.
No, I know. I'm saying when you're watching it.
Oh, now?
In the final product.
Oh, the final product. Yeah, I love hearing the soundtrack.
Are you like, oh, word? Like when you're doing the scene, I wouldn't think they would put that song there, but cool.
Yeah. Sometimes it fits and sometimes it doesn't. Usually, you do your side of the job, they do theirs, and a lot of times it comes off to be a very beautiful ensemble piece of work. It's a collaboration in film, from what I understand. Yeah, to see it, that was amazing. And in doing it, you don't know it's going to come out like that. But again, when you're surrounded by people who give you the freedom, because I know there's a lot of actors here. I know these guys are actors. Myself, I'm very insecure when I hit a set. I always think I'm gonna get fired. I would always run to the director and ask questions and make sure he passed me on the head and say, yeah, good job, don't worry about it. And didn't have to do that on this set because, you know, they came to you, you know, respecting you as a human being first and then also as an actor. No, do your thing. So I'm looking at Andrew like, what the fuck? Okay. And we just kept going and going and going, and as John said, there was no pressure. We did this for about 5 hours. And finally, one of the money people did come in. And after the money people said, go ahead, just do your thing. You know, it was on. So being able to work in an environment like that for me was a blessing. And with the talented people here, and my buddy Cung, we go back a couple of years. It was one of the best working environments I've ever had. I look forward to working with these people again and bringing you a lot of pleasure in the films that they do.
And I definitely noticed the editing and how awesome it made everything look. It was just so great. And and the music was totally on cue. Now, why did you make these decisions?
Great editors, John Greenhouse, Andrew Bentler, and Andrew Drazak. Two terrific editors who worked on this. And the music was done by Mike Krasner, who I've worked with a bunch of times before. So that was, and last but not least, all that soundtrack work, every song you heard, or at least all the hip hop songs were Lush One, so, and his collaborators. That's my little brother, who actually could do that.
Don't be embarrassed.
I'm not, I'm just trying to, just anyway, no, he did all the songs in it, and to me, answering on your question, I mean, the music to me is like half the movie, pretty much. It's the whole. You can do a different soundtrack on the movie, and it'd be a totally different movie.
These guys right here.
So, thanks to all those guys. I really did.
Well, thank you all for being here and sharing Dragon Eyes with us. Thank you guys for coming. Tell your friends. It's out in theaters. It's also available on VOD if it's not playing anywhere near them. You have one more question.
I got one more, I'm sorry. My favorite line of the whole film was, Beach has got to reach.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm Beach, I got that reach and I'm gonna knock you the fuck out. No, total ad-lib.
That was ad-lib. As I said, that was like multiple takes. The editing made that work, but that came out of the top of my head. Because his, you know, never mind.
Thanks again to our panel for Dragon Eyes.